and welcome to Algebra. So today we're going to be solving some equations. But just to give you a bit of a recap of what we've been doing, so in our previous lessons we've been simplifying algebraic expressions. Now you might ask, what's the difference between an algebraic expression and an algebraic equation? Well, this is an algebraic expression when we have 2x minus 6. So in this case, our x here, our pronumeral here, is a variable. So it can take on any value it wants. However, when we're looking at equations, this now becomes equal to something. So in this case, I've made it equal 0. So now our x has taken on a completely different meaning. So rather than being a variable, it's now called an unknown. So what we're going to be looking at today is trying to find out how we find out the value of our unknown. So what is the value of our pronumeral in the equation? So first, we're going to look at what this symbol means. So everyone knows it's an equal sign, but what does an equal sign mean? Basically, it means that whatever is on this side has to equal whatever's on this side. So it's like a balance. So you can think of it like it's a scale. So here we have some scales. So for the scales to be equal, whatever's on this side of the scales needs to be equal to whatever's on this side of the scales. So if we consider the equation 2x plus 2 equals 4. And we look at it in terms of our scales. So let's say our numbers just equal our circle and our unknowns are a square. So for our equation, we have 2 squares plus 2 circles, and that's going to equal 4 circles. So when we're talking about equivalence and what the equal signs means, if we turn this around, we can see that our 4 now equals our 2 plus our 2 unknowns. So to solve this equation, we need to do the same operation on both sides of our equation. So we can say, okay, so we have an extra 2 over here and we've got 4 over here. So what we can do is we can remove 1 from each side. Now we have 2 squares and 2 circles. So what we can do to make it so we only have 1 square and 1 circle is divide by 2. So we'll end up with 1 square and 1 circle. So in this equation up here, our x will equal 1. So the square represents 1 circle. And if we turn this around, it's the same. The square equals the 1 circle. So when we're doing these types of questions, we need to think about what's happening on one side and do the same to the other side. So that's what we call equivalent. So if it equals something on one side, it's got to equal the same thing on the other side. So now if we do some questions, just to have a little bit of a practice in that area. So let's consider the question 3x plus 5 equals 20. So what we could do is we could come back down to our scales, and if you just give me a second. So if we come down to our scales down here, what we have is we have 3 squares and we have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 3 squares, 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 circles. On the other side of our equation, we'll have 5 cir we'll have 20 circles. So what we do first is we look at our equation and go, okay, so I've got 5 circles over here in 3 squares, and I have 20 circles over here. So to make our scales easier, we can remove the same thing from each side. So in this case, we'd minus 5. So when we take off our 5, what we have is 3x, because these two cancel off and make 0. So over here, we've only got our 3 boxes left, equals 15, because 20 minus 5 gives us 15. And if we count over here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But what do we do now? We have 3 crates, 15 circles. So what we can do is we can divide this side by 3 and this side by 3. Because we've got 1 lot of 5, 2 lots of 5, 3 lots of 5. So we can cross off this one, we can cross off this one, cross off this crate, cross off this crate. So what we end up with is x equals 5, because that's what we have left over on this side. Okay, so now we're going to try some other ones, but this time we're not going to use the scales. If at any point you get a bit confused, you can start looking at it like we did with the scales. Okay, let me just get all that off. Okay, so let's consider we have the equation 5x minus 7 equals 18. What's the first thing that we need to do in this question? So if we went back to thinking about this, we'd have 5 crates, we'd have negative 7, so maybe we can think of it like it's a balloon. It's holding the scales up instead of pulling them down this time. And over here we can have 18 circles again. So when we think about it, so what's the first step that we need to do? We need to remove the negative 7 so we can have our x all by itself, because we want to change whatever operation we have over here. So if you have a positive 7 here, because we need to do the inverse operation. So because you've got a negative 7, we want to add 7 to get rid of that. And over here, we're going to add 7 over here as well. So we'll have 5x equals 18 plus 7 gives us 25. So now we have the next line of our equation. So we have 5x equals 25. So now what we need to do is we need to find out what 1x is going to equal. So to do that, we need to divide, because here we've got multiplication. The inverse operation of multiplication is divide. So we divide by 5 on both sides. And we end up with x equals 5. So that's our inverse operation there, and that's how we can solve it. So these are just our 2-step equations. You can have many more steps in your equations, and you kind of got to work backwards. So you got to look at your x, and you got to figure out, what did I do to that x to get it to that point? So I can then work backwards. So if we had something like 5x plus 2 divided by 4 equals 10. So in this equation, the first thing we have to do is look at it and go, well, what needs to happen first? I can't minus the 2 because it's divided by 4. So maybe I need to multiply everything by 4. So if we do multiplied by 4 times 4, what we end up with is 5x plus 2 equals 40. Now we minus our 2 to get rid of that one, and then it's just like the equations that we did before. So we'll have our 5x equals 38 we divide by 5. And divide by 5. So we'll have x equals 38 on 5, which is the same as 7 3/5. So that's just a couple of questions. So during class today, we're actually going to look through a whole lot more questions like this, and we're going to work through some other things. We're going to start looking at what happens when you've got a negative, when negative x equals something, and how to make it so it's a positive. And we're also going to look at some expanding brackets and things like that. So similar to what we've done in solving algebraic expressions, but this time we're going to do them as algebraic equations where we need to find the value of our x. Looking forward to it!